Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and I think is very near and dear to everybody's heart, and that's the topic of money. But we're also going to talk about mindset and the mindset of money and what that means. And we've talked about money in the past, and I've told you that wealth is not about how much you make; it's about how much you keep. And my guests today are Michael Cannivet and Geoffrey Berwind. Now, you know Geoffrey from a previous podcast episode that we did on storytelling. Michael is the author of this book. It's called The 4-Minute Retirement Plan. Um, and it's really, really a cool book. This is not selling you a book, okay? Just let me tell you this up front. You guys are going to get a lot out of this episode without even having to buy the book. Okay, because this is all about sharing. This is all about talking about our own experiences in making money so that, you one of the best ways to success is to copy it. So, Michael, Geoffrey, welcome to Finding Better.
Thanks for having us, John.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. All right. So we all know that money is important. We all know that saving for retirement is important. For some people, it's 30, 40 years out there. And a lot of people are thinking, you know what, I've got plenty of time to do this. And the thing about money is it's so hard. It's so hard to save money. It's so hard to build for the future when life gets in the way. And, so I'd love for you guys to share your stories about what you've done and how you have gotten to the point that you've gotten to and the kinds of things that you're sharing with other people to help them be successful.
Sure. I guess I'll start. Thanks for having me today, John.
You bet.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Wealth management's complicated, especially nowadays. Every client I've ever worked with in my almost 20-year career now, I think a lot of times in their life, they're busy, confused, and conflicted about how to manage their money. And to solve that riddle is difficult because a lot of what the financial industry offers in the way of solutions are kind of cookie cutter in nature. But as I like to say, people are not cookies, they're complicated. And that's
Right.
why when you take generic solutions that are very numbers focused, a lot of times it doesn't resonate in someone's mind on an emotional level enough to really give them the conviction they need to follow through on a path that they feel really good about.
And one
Um,
one thing, if I may, is that not only is there cookie cutters, everybody's got a different cookie, and everybody says their cookie is the right cookie. And it drives me crazy. And it's so because it makes it so hard. It makes it so hard. And you're absolutely right. Everybody is an individual. Everybody is different. And so what was your story that made you come to realize all this?
it's born of my own experience.
Hmm.
I'm a chartered financial analyst. I've been an equity analyst at a multi-billion dollar investment management firm working for a billionaire. And I took everything I've learned and I've applied it. And then I hit a point in my life where none of those solutions really resonated with me. I hit a fork in a road.
And what
Um,
was that fork?
After working at my previous employer for 7 years and having a top 1% track record in terms of the equity portfolio I managed, and growing the firm 500% in the 7-year period, I was unexpectedly fired. And in that moment, my financial plan disintegrated before my very eyes. And then
Okay.
it took about a week to kind of just digest what had just happened because I was confused. I thought on paper we were succeeding.
It
We had
only
grown
took
the
you a
firm, like I
week?
said,
Yeah.
500%. I was doing a good job managing the money, but my partner was not happy with where things were going in our transition plan. And so he decided to take a different course. And nothing in the numbers suggested that was the right decision, but that was his decision to make, and I had to accept it. And
So you
then
thought so you thought everything was going great. I mean, you were flying high, you were top 1%, and the proverbial crap hit the fan.
Yeah, and so what I learned from it, John, is that success on paper doesn't always filter through to success in life, number one. Number two, life is not linear. We all hit forks in the road and unexpected speed bumps. It could be being fired from a job, it could be losing a loved one or getting sick, it could be a whole myriad of things. But when we hit those rough patches, we have to adjust, right? And so I did adjust, and I decided after about a week or so of contemplating things that I would start my own investment management firm. Then another surprise came along. About a month later, after a few clients followed me, I was sued by this former partner for the simple fact that people followed me to my new firm after I was fired. I was sued. So this was a real conundrum, okay? Because aside from all the unfairness in my own mind about what had just happened, I had to now digest the fact that I am an entrepreneur without a paycheck. At the time, my wife was staying home with our little ones. She wasn't in the workforce, so I was the sole breadwinner. I had a mortgage to pay. And now I had very large legal bills ahead of me to deal with this financial conundrum that
My
landed in my lap.
goodness. Mm-hmm.
So it's hard enough to start a business. Being an entrepreneur is tough. I know this because I know the numbers of the financial world, and most businesses don't last more than 5 years. So if you take those odds and then you stack on top of it, potentially six-figure legal bills that you're going to have to pay for as well. I mean, it just all of a sudden, this new business plan that I had just seemed very shaky. So the financial analyst in me looked at those numbers and said to himself, this doesn't make sense to continue. I better go get another job. But then there's another side of me that said, no, 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 no. That's not the story I want to tell in my life.
Yeah.
So long story short, I decided to persevere and fight back. And the happy end of the story is even though this lawsuit went on for several years, I countersued and I won my attorney's fees. So the funny part about it, it wasn't funny at the time, but it's interesting looking back. I ended up having to liquidate my own 401k, my IRA, to pay for that legal fight,
My goodness.
which is the cardinal sin of financial planning. Okay. CFAs, CFPs would never advise to do that because there's a lot of tax ramifications. But you know what? It worked out because my company is worth more than my IRA was. This company that I've built over the years and the company I'm going to continue to build. And so I broke a ton of financial rules when I started my company and it worked out. And
So when your clients break those rules, you don't have a leg to stand on in terms of telling them don't do that, right?
Don't break the
I'm going to
rules.
respect that there are people that are different cookies, like you said.
Yeah, there you
John.
go. Exactly. I want to go back to something that you said early on. And you said that you made that, you came to that fork in the road, that proverbial fork in the road that you talked about, and you decided. And, one of the things that I talk about all the time is that life is your choice, right? Your life is a product of the choices and decisions that you've made. And moving forward, your life is going to be the product of the decisions that you make. And so you decided to persevere. You decided that, I mean, something clicked on in you that said, I'm going to do this come hell or high water. And it worked out. It worked out. And
And if I didn't
congratulations.
pursue that path, John, I knew, see, what really did it for me was thinking about 20, 30 years in the future. If I look back on this period of my life and I surrender and wave the white flag because someone's bullying me, will I be happy with the life I've lived?
Yeah.
And I said, no way. I'm a
Yeah,
good money manager. I can recover from this if I stay true to myself, my core values, and my
that's
vision
right.
for the life I want to live. And so that's what kind of kickstarted this thing in my mind that, you know what, there's something missing in the financial world right now, and that's the story element. Stories are really the way we think about our life. We don't think of our life in a spreadsheet, right? We
Right.
think of our life as a story. We're the star of that story in a lot of ways. And what we sometimes lose sight of is that we're also the author, director of the story. We have so much power if we just know what kind of story we want to tell and we're really clear about it. So that's what kind of got me thinking about Roger Bannister's story.
So
He happened,
can I just make a real quick comment?
of course.
A lot of people don't even know that they're writing their own story. Right? I mean, you talk about we're our own story. But I think a big part of this conversation is to understand that we are all in the middle of our own stories. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? So I just want to share that. Roger Bannister, go ahead.
Well, Roger Bannister has an interesting story. I'll give you the short version. But he was the inspiration for the 4 minute aspect of my book. He ran the first 4 minute mile in the
Mhm.
1950s. And he is a gentleman who had to bounce back from adversity to achieve that amazing feat as well. He had already completed his run in the Olympics, got fourth place, which is, pretty much a nothing burger in terms of medals. So kind of a disappointing finish, I'm sure. And most people thought he'd retire. But he was 25 years old, a medical student at Oxford, and even though he only had about a half-hour day to train, which wasn't as much as the other competitors, he decided, I'm going to run the first 4 minute mile, and I'm going to do it to prove to people that this is not impossible. Back in the 1950s, there had been a record mile run that was like 4 minutes and a second that had lasted for about 10 years. And after person couldn't beat it, people developed all these weird theories that maybe it's just impossible. The human body is not designed to run that fast. And since Roger Bannister was a physician, he knew that was bogus. He knew it was a mental problem in terms of that 4 minute barrier. So he chunked down the race to a real simple way of conquering it. He said to himself, okay, if people can run a 4 minute and 1 second mile, they can run a 4 minute mile.
Sure.
That's one thing that's really obvious. The other thing that was obvious is that there's 4 laps in a mile. So he knew that if he could run 59 seconds per lap, he would achieve his goal. So that's how he designed his whole training regimen. And he had two pace runners that ran with him on the race day when he broke the record. And their entire job during that race was to hit the 59-second marks to keep him on pace. So that because a lot of times runners, they run faster on the early laps and
Right.
then they lose
Right.
stamina at the end.
Right.
So Bannister's breakthrough was developing a consistent strategy that he believed in because he had a positive story. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the book is take the biggest financial riddle in the world right now, which is retirement planning. It's the one that always ranks number one in surveys for most, stressful financial issue that people deal with. And I want to help people chunk down that race that they're running. But before we talk about, shortcut strategies and different things that they could implement, I thought it was really important to first get the story right. What are you trying to do and why? What are your core values? Are those linked to inspiring goals? Is it linked to a story you really are excited to tell about your life? And so that's what led to the book, and that's how I met Geoffrey. And Geoffrey's the most gifted storyteller I've ever met. And so we've, in collaborating on the book, have started to collaborate more on our business, and we're going to build a business around this idea.
When
That's what I'm
you,
excited about.
yeah, when you, I think if I were to distill everything with regards to Roger Bannister and the things that you talked about, it really is getting down to the why of your life, right? It's getting down, Simon Sinek, he's got the book Start with Why. It's an amazing book. I'm not here to sell his books, but it's an amazing book because we all, a lot of us start with the what. And so the idea of the story and creating the stories is all about getting to the why. Because if you have a strong enough why, like Roger Bannister did, you can move mountains. You can move mountains. But if you don't have that why, life just gets in the way every single time. And the last comment, and I'll let you continue, is that we all hear the word retirement. And, some of us are not even a year old yet, and some of us are over 100 years old. And we all look at retirement in that term differently. And, one of the things that I want young people to understand is that retirement is not that far away. If you're 20 years old, it is not that far away. The days are long, but the years are really, really short, folks. And so, yeah, I don't want to get into lecture mode.
No,
But
but I
just
agree, John. You
just my
can't start
experience.
running the retirement race at age 62, think you
No, you
retire by
can't.
65 and it's all hunky dory. You got to play. It's a long race. It's a stamina race.
Yep,
And part of stamina is maintaining positive attitude through ups and downs. Like I say in the book, people have bull and bear markets in their lives. And
absolutely.
there's nothing in the spreadsheets that are there to help them adapt and rewire where they're trying to go.
That's right.
But that's where a story can come in helpful because all great stories have, guess what, ups and downs. You don't have a
Absolutely.
glorious finish to a story if there wasn't a struggle before it. So in some ways, we can embrace our struggles as long as we're still true to our core values and it doesn't take us away from what we're trying to achieve.
That's right. That's right. Geoffrey, you were gonna say something?
Well, we're never taught really, certainly not in school, what our why is. Where are you taken through that
Absolutely.
process? And if you don't know what your why is, and so we're grounding our company in core values. And where is that taught? Maybe it's passed on to you by special people in your life. Typically, like for Michael and I, it's our grandmothers. They gave us, so much, right? And so my grandmother gave me the importance of friendship and creativity and kindness and joy and laughter and stories. So when we go through the dips, and I've gone through my dips, I ended up closing my family retail stores in my late 30s, and it was really a dark time, really dark. And luckily, faith is also big with me. And so a very close
Mhm.
friend helped me ground myself in God. And I'm like, okay. And I started a theater. In 2012, I got very curable, got cancer though. And in any of the downtimes, like with Michael, what he went through, we're tempted to abandon, as Michael says it this way, we're tempted to abandon our story.
Yes.
Life has thrown stuff at us. And unless we're really grounded in the things that are matter to us, family, legacy, trustworthiness, our stories, all these things, we can give up. We get lost. And
You
how
know,
do you recover? It's taken me, and frankly, working with Michael over the years has helped me reframe my cancer story. It is now totally in the rearview mirror. It took me 12 years to put that in the rearview mirror. And thanks to this guy,
Wow.
it is in the rearview mirror. Reinventing my life in my mid 30s. It's like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
followed my creativity core value and I started a theater, and that led to historic Philadelphia, and that led to. So if you don't know what your core values are, that is your why. And when
Yeah.
you tell your
Yep.
story
Yep.
related to the core values and then you anchor it when the tough time comes, they're not maybe, they are coming. It's around the corner. What are you going to do? So that's why storytelling, financial planning combined with storytelling is incredible.
You know, I don't disagree on anything that you just said, Geoffrey. I just want to emphasize the point on values because, I heard, and this is a couple of years ago, I heard somebody say, and I don't even remember where I heard it, is that, you know what, I don't have time to teach my kid values. That I leave that to the schools to do that.
Wow.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? And since then I have been, once you hear something, all of a sudden, you buy a brand new car and then you see your car driving out around all over the place, right? When I heard that, I started hearing that over and over and over again. And so how do you, for folk, um how do you define your values? How does a person sit down and define their values? And one of the ways that I've done it, and one of the ways that I tell share with people to do it, is part of the storytelling. What is your story, and who is that person you want to become? Right? Who is that person you want to be? And whatever that person is you want to be, go out and start hanging out with people like that, right? If you want to have more respect, be more respectful. And hang around with more respectful people, blah, 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 right? And so it's really hard for some people to really clearly define what those values are. And so, what are some of the things that you guys do because that's the basis of what you guys are doing, right? What are some of the things that you do, or just one, to help people define their values?
well, we're encouraging people to write the story of their life, and you can do that in various ways. You can do a memoir, you could do an oral history, or you could even do a documentary movie about yourself, which we're going to help people do. It doesn't matter exactly what form it takes, but you have to think of your life as a story. And once you think of it that way, I think it's important to go back in time and try to identify the periods in your life when you felt the most on track, when were you the most happy and excited about where you were in your life and where you were going? And when you think about that stuff, you think about where was I, what was I doing, and who was I with? Like Geoffrey said earlier, our grandmothers were very big inspirational forces in our lives when we were young. And when you're in your childhood's a good place to fish for core values because our brains are most malleable when we're a baby until about the age of 8. So a lot of our impressions of the world are formulated during those years. So if there's anybody that was a particularly, important mentor or a parent that was really there for you or a grandparent or even someone else, that's a good place to start. Another way to think about it, in my opinion, is to kind of reverse engineer it. When the periods of your life that have been the darkest have come along, where were you? Who were you around? What were you doing? And then sometimes you can identify that the core value from your childhood or whatever year it came along into your life wasn't being represented well in that period. And that's really the rubber stamp that tells you that this is an important thing that now in the future, I need to risk manage this. I cannot abandon this core value ever again, or it's guaranteed to make me unhappy.
Right.
And so what we want to do is we want to take these insights and then use those as breadcrumbs to kind of find our way home. And use that to plan our future goals. In the financial world, a lot of people have esoteric, bland, non-emotional goals. Retire at 65, have an emergency savings account.
Right.
I mean, these are important things, but they're not something that gets you excited to get up in the morning and go create that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But you can reframe it. So someone I mentioned in the book, a younger client I work with, it's important for him to have an emergency savings account, but he's not the most excited about that particular goal. He got more excited about it when he started thinking about the fact that his father is somebody that was important in his life, who always embodied the virtue of responsibility. So having that account and that savings is about embodying the virtues of his father. And
and that's the why. That's the why.
Yes, that's the why.
There's the why. Yeah.
Geoffrey, would you add anything?
Well, you know what you're making me think of, and Michael, you and I haven't even talked about this, but you're bringing back a memory. My grandparents brought me up, and I'm more my grandmother's grandson, and granddad was great, but you just struck a memory. He would say, you got to live defensively. And actually, working, John, with Michael, that's actually not good advice. Maybe you need to have insurance and maybe you need to have that. But from cancer to COVID, I started becoming risk averse. And I was starting to abandon my story of collaboration, creativity, risk taking, launching things, taking risks. So I had to recover my story. And so you got to listen to the voices of the past, even when they mean well. They may send you down the wrong story rabbit hole.
Yeah.
My grandmother was like, you can do anything. And she was 92 when she made a new best friend, and that new best friend was 100. So like, at age 68, I'm like, I got 25 more years at least of creating and taking risks and going for it. So I've taken control of our stories. We got to take control of it because crap will happen. And we're going to, as Michael said, you could be tempted to abandon them. That temptation is the worst.
Yes.
You got to face it. And we're here to make sure, because life, especially as you get older, and you're looking, I'm going to retire and I'm going to, just watch my savings every day. That's boring.
Yeah.
Go live your life.
No, the other thing that helps. Go ahead, John.
I was just going just one quick comment on what you just said, Geoffrey. We grow up the ages up to 8 years old or 12 years old, and we have these big dreams, and life comes and tells you to be defensive, right? Life tells you don't take risks. It's like, okay, I get that. But as in everything, it's a balance. It's a balance. But what I see all the time is that the risk gets way out of whack, and we forget how to dream, and we forget how to go after what we want, and we just become victims of life. So thank you for. I love how you frame that, Geoffrey. That your grandfather said, "Live defensively."
I haven't thought about that for 20 years,
and so it just came up. That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's part of what we call the happiness curve. There's psychological studies that show that around the age of 20 through about 45 or 50, the happiness curve is basically a smile. From around 25, which early adulthood, to midlife is when happiness tends to go down for most people. and this is across cultures, even different primates they've studied and believe this is true. This is just something that tends to happen. But then the good news is it tends to curve back up towards the end of life for most people. There's theories that maybe this is evolutionary a little bit, but one of our goals as a company for the next few decades is to help people bend that happiness curve by actively managing their story. One of the reasons I think people tend to dip in happiness into midlife, it's partially the pressures on your time. If you're trying to raise kids, pay bills, all these
Absolutely.
things can be stressful,
Mhm.
of course. But also, almost everybody, well, yeah, anybody I know has faced some type of adversity or speed bump in their life. The longer you live, the more time there's for things to go wrong. They're going to be different
Yeah,
things,
that's
right?
right. That's right.
But nobody models that. Like, what financial plan? I've never seen one in the standard financial planning world where it like tells you like get ready for all hell to break loose in 5 years or 10 years. Like, we don't model these things, just like the Fed has never modeled a recession forecast ever. Guess what? There's recessions. Guess what? There's adversity in life. But the key is to not let that pollute your time perspective, because your time perspective is intricately linked to your well-being. And if we want to make wealth management more about money and well-being, which I think everybody thinks is a good idea that I talk to,
Yeah.
we have to think of new ways to engineer that. And one of the ways to do that is having a healthy time perspective that is baked into your story that you own. And so we intend to help people, coach people on that, and then not just write the story or film the story, whatever we do to document it, but then ongoing coaching after that, I think, is also important, because sometimes we get so caught up in our own lives, John, we can't see through the fog. But someone else who we have as a trusted advisor or friend or family member that understands us, understands the story we're trying to tell in our life, there's always an ability to pick ourselves up and move forward again when we fall down. We just have to remember that we have that power. And that's what your story can do for you if you actively manage it.
And that's what Michael is doing for his two boys, because they've seen him and continue to witness how he manages his story and building the resilience and recovering from dark times. This is powerful legacy.
I love it. I love what you guys are doing, because the, I'm sure, I believe, I think I'm sure, Michael, that one of your common experiences is people get really riled up and inspired about putting together this financial plan, and they're going down the road, and then boom, something bad happens, and they just surrender. It just goes away, and so I love the idea, and I love your concept of building that story, because the story goes beyond the story that you build for yourself, goes beyond that moment, right? And it says, yes, um, yeah, we have built in bad stuff is going to happen, right? But we're going to keep on going, and we're going to keep on working your story, so that at the end of this thing, one of the neatest exercises that I'd ever gone through was called the rocking chair exercise. And that's an exercise where you think about yourself, and you're sitting in a rocking chair, and you're, I don't know, 85, 90 years old, and you're looking back on your life, because there comes a point in time, and I learned this from a wonderful aunt of mine, that the only thing that you really have to look forward to is looking at your memories that you've of your life. And so what are you going to look back on? What are those memories? And whatever those memories are that you're looking back on as you're rocking in that rocking chair, go live it. Right. And so that, as you say, reverse engineering, that's another way to think about it. But I love what you guys are doing with this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as you look forward, um, you're running your business. I don't know how many people are listening to this, a whole bunch, right? But what kind of advice can you give to folks who are just thinking about this and are looking at establishing that retirement plan?
Um, Geoffrey, you want to go first?
Well, just one thing you and I talk a lot about, Michael, is are we going to settle? You know, And I think we do live in a culture which is inviting us to go on automatic pilot
Yep.
and just not even make decisions, not even think, not to grab the reins, as Michael and I texted each other earlier today. It's like, yeah, if you're going to settle, that rocking chair is not going to be very comfortable.
Yeah, that's right. That's
That's
right.
right. A lot of if you talk to people that work in hospice care, and what's the number one regret people have at the end of life? It's the chances not taken. It's the
Yes.
settling. And I think it's part of what's going on right now broadly from my perch. And when I look at, the world as an investor, but also just as a human being, I think there's a passive bubble. I think people are too passive. We're passive to our phones. People spend on average 6 or 7 hours a day on their iPhones sometimes. Like, guess what? Your iPhone is engineered with a lot of smart engineers to psychologically manipulate you for the benefit of advertisers.
Absolutely.
You don't want advertisers or tech companies to write your story, John. You want to write your story. And so, but if we're passive and we just absorb what the external world shoves in front of our face and we judge ourselves or evaluate whether we're succeeding or not based on that, that can be a path to misery.
Yeah.
I recommend getting a more narrow focus. It's not that we want to tune out the external world, but we don't want to tune out our internal world either. We have to preserve that and preserve our past. And we can only do that if we're clear about who we are and who we want to be in the future. And from that, we can come up with a narrower list of goals that are actually inspiring because they're actually part of the story that we want to tell based on our core values. And narrowing our focus is key, just like Roger Bannister did. I mean, he had the simplest strategy to run the first 4-minute mile. 59-second splits. That's all he practiced for a half hour every day. Just run 59 seconds, run 59 seconds, run 59 seconds, and don't give up.
Yeah.
So with the financial plan, the thing that's tough about retirement is it's a long race with a lot of variables. So a lot of people, I think, as you're alluding to, get overwhelmed by that complexity. So the second half of the book is about giving people time-tested, proven strategies to conquer what I call the 4 retirement laps, because people need to chunk this down, right? It's not just about retiring. It's about saving money, investing money, living the lifestyle that you want, and leaving the legacy that you're proud of. I think those are
Mhm.
the 4 quadrants of how you can categorize things to simplify the retirement race. And within those 4 laps, there's 3 chapters that each, and I give people 4 different strategies that they can pick from at the end of the chapter to implement so that they can improve how they save, how they invest, how they plan their lifestyle, how they plan their legacy. Because,
Okay.
there's no perfect solution that I or anyone else can give anybody. But there's a lot of ways to succeed financially if we're covering all our bases. The key is to not
Absolutely.
neglect any one of those areas too
Right.
much. If we
Yep.
don't save any money, we have nothing to invest. So you got to
Yes.
do both of those, right? And if you're a terrible investor, you can save a lot of money, but lose it all in the terrible crypto investment or something.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
If you build up a financial war chest, but you don't use those funds to live the lifestyle you want, you're not going to be happy. So what's the point? And ultimately, when you are in that rocking chair someday, looking back, you want to be proud of the legacy you're going to leave. And if you do that right, you become immortal because your meaning of your life carries on even when you're not here anymore.
There you go. There you go. I love that. I love your analogies, Michael. I love how you talk about life, right? And Geoffrey, you mentioned a topic of culture, the culture that we live in. We live in a culture right now where everybody wants something from you. And Scott McNeely, who was the CEO of a company called Sun Microsystems, once said, well, when you take a look at Facebook and you look at all these different social media companies, and you're getting all these things for free, understand the product is you. The product is you. And so when you think about everything that's happening, I mean, we're constantly bombarded with advertisements and messaging of inadequacy, that you have to buy these products, you have to do these things in order to be cool, right? And so our world that we live in, I think, even more than ever, certainly worse than me growing up, is so hard and it's so harsh, and there's so many detractors from keeping on that financial plan. And so folks, what we've been talking about is building your why, understanding that you are living your story. And at some point in time, before you know it, we're all going to look back and go, oh, wow, did we leave behind a whole bunch of wreckage, or did we leave behind a better world, right? And so one thing that I'd encourage everybody to do is, start with your story. We talked about Geoffrey and Michael talked about building a video, building your memoirs and things like that. Let's start simple. Take a piece of paper and start writing your story, writing what you want your story to be, and just go with it, right? And Michael, you said a word that is really, really key, and that word is active. Active, right? Write down that story. Just start with 3 or 4 things, and just write that story. And then as you're writing that story and you come up with really cool things, go live it. Go live it. And then you're going to start getting your whys. And when you get your whys, then you're going to start going, okay, how am I going to be able to afford this stuff? And then stuff comes together. And I promise, at least my experience has been, when you commit to the why, the hows show up. Right? You somehow they'll show up. So, but just start simple, and then you know what, you got a whole bunch of really amazing ideas from this talk. But if you want to go more and go deeper into it, this is a book. You don't have to buy it. But it goes into more detail on what each lap stands for in the 4-minute mile. So with that, Michael, Geoffrey, this has been amazing. This has been wonderful. Thank you for joining me. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
Keep finding better, right?
Keep
looking for it.
That's the point.
Keep the brand.
Right?
We're keeping the brand clear.
Exactly.
Find better.
Exactly.
I agree.
And Michael, Geoffrey, how best, if people want to reach out to you, if people want to learn more about you, how do they do that?
Sure. You can go to our website, www.silverlight.us. I've been writing for Forbes since 2017. You can follow me if you want to read articles that I put out over time. Those are 2 good ways.
Wonderful. Silverlight is silver, Light, right?
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. And folks, you know what? This is an episode to share. Share with folks, and because that's what we're doing. We're just sharing experiences. We're sharing ideas. We're sharing, again, going back to the beginning, we're sharing what we've done, because sometimes the best way to success is to copy it. So with that, thank you for joining me, Geoffrey, Michael. Thank you so much. I love you guys. God bless you. And everybody out there, thanks for joining us. I love you. God bless you. And we'll see you next time.